So we're still doing fats or lipids. So lipids are anything that in your body that doesn't mix with water. So we talked about fatty acids last week because they're the building blocks that make triglycerides, which are fats. And our body as animals, we store things as saturated fats. And Edgar, did you send me an email with a topic or no?
No.
Okay. I have 4 classes. I'm trying to keep track. And then we talked about the essential fatty acids. So those were in nuts and seeds and stuff. And so our last piece that we're going to go over today is these guys, the LDLs and the HDLs, which you've all heard of. They're buzz initials, and it's talking about cholesterol. And so hopefully I can undo some of the damage that's done by the media about those are not actually cholesterol. But and also the slide, I think I showed this picture with something else, and I don't fully agree with it. I do agree. So ideas for topics. I need topics this week. Just give me something, and then we can change it on Monday. But our presentations are next week and next Wednesday, and you need to be here. I'm not going to be recording it, but you do need to be here. If something happens and you are ill, you will have to come on Zoom because it is mandatory. You won't be able to present, but then you'll have to present the next week in person. With that, when I made my schedule, I thought I only had 8 students and a bunch of people signed up. So if anybody would like to go on Monday, feels that they're ready Monday and want to get it over with, we can absolutely do that. So you definitely have to have a topic. Anyway, peanuts or any of the nuts are great topics. Avocados, somebody's picked salmon, so that's not a topic, but those are considered healthy. Probably the salmon only gets good, not like, I mean, obviously this person has an opinion about peanut butter being the best, which I don't think you can say anything's the best. It's an individual thing. Salmon, I would never put as the best because we have polluted water so much. And so there is that concern with the mercury, as well as anything that has that much fat, it's going to accumulate other toxins that we've put in the water. And also the type of salmon. So that, it's hard to tell, but Pacific salmon does have high in the essential fatty acids, whereas the Atlantic salmon has absolutely none. And so I showed that picture that is very different, the different types of fish. And like here, where they're saying that butter is the worst thing possible, I cannot agree with that at all. Yeah, I will agree that these things that are totally processed are not good for you. They're crap. I make pizza every week. I make the crust. We actually don't use cheese on pizza. I haven't used cheese on pizza for 10 years. And people are like, well, that's not pizza. And actually it is. It's amazing. It's delicious. And so you actually can make things in a healthy way. And she's doing chocolate muffins as a topic. And I'm like, do you mean chocolate? Do you mean muffins? But it's because she wants to look at, and so this is like an idea also, if you haven't picked this topic, she wants to look at how bad, and then she's been actually each week modifying her recipe and making it even healthier. And so I've seen her bring in the chocolate muffins and eating them, and they look amazing. And so it's been really cool. And so this is highly processed. As far as the sugars, there's probably 4 types of sugars. I mean, it's completely fake. Probably also they're all photoshopped, or they spray hairspray on them so it stays like that. But it's all the fats too, because they're highly oxidized and processed. So the reason that this probably gets the worst is it's saturated fats, but it also, anytime you get something from an animal source, cholesterol is going to be in there. And so that's our topic today, is cholesterol. And so you don't want to eat a whole stick of butter, but using a little bit of butter isn't going to hurt you. And that was the other thing, like eggs. If you've been doing baked stuff, try doing a flax egg or a chia egg. I personally like flax eggs. I have to see how to get this to go forward. I think the only way I can get to go forward is this. So with that, we're going to talk about cholesterol. And most people, when I say cholesterol, they're thinking, oh, bad news, cholesterol is bad for you. That's why butter's bad. Like, why does Stephen like not agree and Sherpa doesn't agree? Cholesterol is not essential. Our liver makes it, of course, right? So if we did a test in here and said, where is this made? Just keep picking liver as the answer for everything behind your liver. Your liver actually makes cholesterol, so you don't have to get it in your diet. Cholesterol is needed. Our body makes it because it is the precursor that makes steroids in our body, and we need steroids. So taking steroids on the outside is going to kill you at 40. These guys all die when they're 40, and I don't know why they want to look like that. So never take steroids externally. Terrible idea. But that's why I show that there is, I apologize, this is going to drive me crazy. This is what you're going to see pictures. And again, I'm a chemist, but you'll see these rings, and that's what steroids. Whenever you see that picture, it's a steroid. And the next picture should show cholesterol. So this is what cholesterol looks like. And we see this ring structure here. And so cholesterol gets modified. This piece gets cut off, and it gets changed into each of the different steroids. And I have a picture on the next slide that you kind of see, and you'll see the similarities. But whenever you see a picture, because you'll start seeing those, this is if we showed it with sticks and balls. And why it's as a lipid is it's carbons. That's all these are carbons. Whenever they don't write it in, it's carbons. Every corner here, these are bonds, these are all carbons. And so it doesn't like water. Water likes OHs, but there's only one OH, and this whole part overwhelms it. So there's just too much. And so this is going to be found anywhere you have other fats in your body. And so our body can't mix with water. It's not going to dissolve. And so that's why it's going to be found in blood clots. Whenever you look at a blood clot, wherever it is in the body, a thrombus in the leg, in the heart, and go into the brain, it's going to have cholesterol in it, because cholesterol is just going to be part of that. And so that's why it gets a bad name. And everybody, and then you talk about, we're going to talk about the HDLs and LDLs, the tug of war that is going on with those. And that's a picture. I meant to put a video in case you've never seen this, but that's actually an actual picture of what the arteries look like. Anytime they look at that yellow gunk, that is saturated fat and cholesterol. And that is what clogs up your arteries. And that is why cholesterol gets such a bad name. So the misunderstanding, though, is where it's coming from is not necessarily outside. It is if you're eating more of anything that you don't need. So if you're eating like a whole box of butter and that's all you eat, that's like terrible for you, then yeah, you're going to get that. But all of your excess calories, they go through your liver. So if you eat that muffin that was all sugar, your body's going to digest it fast, and your liver is going to go, I have to store this, because it thinks food is coming for the next 4 hours. It's thinking that there's fiber involved, and it's going to release your food very slowly, and it's not. Until it gets digested fast, and your liver just stores it as saturated fat and cholesterol. And so it breaks everything down into your body into 2 carbon groups. And then it just sticks them back together into cholesterol. So excess protein, and that's where these protein powders, I think, are going to be the biggest evil possibly that's out there, as well as the refined oils and all of that. But so when you're getting stuff that your body's going, what the heck, it just breaks it down, because that protein is going to get broken down before it can be sent to your muscles, and you're getting too much of it at once, and it's getting stored not as protein, but as saturated fat and cholesterol. And then it ends up clogging up your arteries. So it's more learning how to eat in moderation, so you're not overeating, so you stay healthy. And it is really a joy in this class, because everybody is a nice healthy size, but you can just go to any store or go to Costco. I don't go there anymore. And Americans are not a normal size. even at schools. Like Elena works at a school, and it's really hard seeing, and it's because they're eating out of a bag. They're eating processed food, and you just see them, and they like, and so, right, teach kids that they love apples. If you give them apples, they will eat it. Anyway, so they actually, there's videos where they're actually pulling this stuff out. And so it's not just coming from your diet, it's coming from anytime you overeat anything. And then everybody has a number, cholesterol number. So if your number is above 220, you're considered to have high cholesterol. That number actually used to be over 250. And then once they, might have been 260, once they came out with Lipitor, like 20 some years ago, they changed the number. And they suddenly, I think it was 200. Well, in the past 2 years, which none of us know because coronavirus took over all the news, cholesterol, total cholesterol is no longer an indication of heart disease. It's been taken off the list. Now, the panel of types of cholesterol can still be an indication, but it's actually kind of fascinating. And so these are like old articles that were there, and it is that there's a lot of misunderstanding about cholesterol, and it's gotten really confusing because of the keto and all these doctors that get out there and they're like, I'm a doctor and you should be eating this and that. And so how you cook your eggs does make a difference. So you don't want to, having a runny yolk is definitely going to be better. Boiling eggs. When I was pregnant, I was in school for Chinese medicine, and they actually were big that it's one of the best things you can do is eating eggs. I was eating an egg every day. My mom grew up on a farm. You really want to try it. I mean, around here, you can find farm fresh eggs. So cholesterol is the precursor for all of these, your steroids. So again, this is cholesterol. And then anything that has these rings is a steroid. So this is just a couple of them. I think I have another picture of more of them. But you can see they're really similar. So there's 3 types of estrogens that we have. And so this is just one of them. And if you look right next door, we all have testosterone and estrogen. It's just a ratio of you have more or less. They're both important. But you can see they only differ by one little thing here. Well, actually a little bit more than that, but these guys all are very similar. And so the steroids are all our sex hormones. And then cortisol is our stress hormone, which should be what the next slide is about. Yeah. So cortisol. Cortisol is when you're stressed. So that's why the tiger is staring at you. So when that tiger appears, and it's really interesting, I'm rereading a book. I'm taking an online meditation. It's not actually online. They send me stuff every 2 weeks to deepen my meditation practice. And he's from India. And so this is over 100 years ago. And so he met I think he's called the Tiger Swami or something, the Tiger Yogi. And it was this guy who would fight tigers with his bare hands and stuff. And so these were young boys, and they were like, they found his address and they went to see him. And he's like, your tigers are the ones that are up here. It's not the tigers out in the forest you need to be fighting. It's the tigers in your own brain. But anyway, if you saw a real tiger, your body is set up, right, to deal with the tiger. And that's the whole fight or flight response. And adrenaline, right, gets the response. Adrenaline makes your heart rate go, it makes you breathe, it's getting blood flowing to your muscles, it turns off your stomach, it turns off your immune system, because you don't need to digest, you don't need to fight viruses, you need to get away from the tiger. So you need to be ready to fight. So it's called adrenaline because it's released from your adrenals, which are back here right above your kidneys. Whenever that is released, it also goes and tells your liver, release the sugar, because your muscles need sugar. It's saying, you got to release all the reserves. We need food right now. We need to fight. We got to run. We got to get away. Some kind of danger has happened. So at the same time that is released, this molecule is released, always. This is hydrophobic. It doesn't like water. So it has to get to your liver. So it's released really close to the liver, but that short distance. So it has to have a little boat that carries it to the liver. And then it goes inside the liver, inside every cell, and it goes to your DNA, and it binds your DNA, and it tells your DNA to change something. Because your body knows you only, when you released all the supplies, so you had enough fuel, you have a 2-hour backup of fuel. If you're fighting and running, if you're doing nothing, if you're just sitting calmly meditating, you have 2 days worth of fuel. And so you have to have a backup. And so this actually tells your body, start breaking down your muscles, not your fat. It actually is telling you break down your muscles. So you have big muscles, your gluteus maximus. And so after about 2 hours, your body starts breaking down your muscles and releases the amino acids, sends it to your liver. The amino acids get changed. Oh, well, wait a minute. There wasn't a tiger. It was all in your brain, right? We all create it. We all make these scenarios. So you never used any of the reserves. All the reserves were released because of that momentary stress, right? Whether it was in traffic or somebody irritated you. You don't even remember 2 hours ago what irritated you 2 hours ago, right? So 2 hours from now, most of us don't remember. So your body released all this sugar that you didn't need, and your body's now breaking down the proteins that are in your muscles, and your liver's gone, what am I going to do with all this extra calories that I don't need? So you may want to guess what it's going to do with all that extra. It's going to store them as saturated fat and cholesterol. It's actually the number one cause of all this cholesterol and stuff building up is these imaginary tigers that we all create. We are the only species that is capable of creating them up here. Every other species, your dog, your cat, whatever you have, they have to have an actual something happen for them to create the stress response. We don't actually have to see a tiger. We just have to get, like, you create those scenarios. We all do that in our brain. We make these movies up. And so this is more what it is. We create this whole agony. I was there this morning. I don't know why. I'm trying to figure out if I had this dream or anger or we just, we're stressed. Oh my gosh. And that's part, yeah. All right. So you release this and you create, that's why I said gut stress. And so this is the name of the molecule that's released in our liver initially, and it runs out after 2 hours. So our cats and our dogs, it's a momentary thing, and then they go back. We are in a state, especially in our society, of perpetual stress. And by the way, the other thing that releases cortisol is fear. And what have they done for us for the past 2 years? They've kept us in a state of fear, of there's something out there and we have to all be careful. There is something to being cautious, but of actually keeping us in fear. So when 9/11 happened, which was a real thing, and terrible, one of the things, looking back on it, they realized, well, everybody was in fear because none of us really knew it was going to happen, that they could control us as a giant society worldwide. And anyway, so look at some of the things that go on in different ways. You can pick which gingerbread man is you. So are you the one who's just kind of angry because he lost his leg? I don't know. Or just confused because you feel like you lost part of your brain. That's, I think, the state I was in this morning. And so if you're always in the stress state, oh, where did cortisol come from? It has that ring structure. Cortisol is made from cholesterol from your liver, is making it and sends it right there to store it. And if you're always having to release the cortisol, you have to keep making more, so your cholesterol levels shoot up. And then you're going to also be storing all the extra stuff that you never use as cholesterol. So my Aunt Mary, you know, rest her soul, she was this tiny little thing from Italy, and her cholesterol was like 350. And I was like, how can Aunt Mary's cholesterol be 350? And I'm like, oh, she's, because so from Sicily, and so Catholic, and Aunt Mary, I never got married, but she prayed for every one of us. that, so somebody got a divorce that's like in the Catholic Church, used to be like, so she's like 100 years ago Catholic Church, which is different now, but she would pray for the redemption of all of our souls and things. And so thankfully the churches have progressed. If you're always getting angry at your computer, your social media, I have watched the stress level of students. Like it's fascinated me because I've been here 25 years and I'm like, I don't understand. And I don't have social media. I've never had it. I don't actually know how to use it. And I definitely don't want it, but students need, like, you post something on your social media and nobody liked it yet. What's wrong? What did I do wrong? Why does nobody like me? And you create that whole scenario, and guess what? You're releasing that stuff. Get rid of your social media. Maybe we'll do that for a week. That would be amazing to, like, not look at Twitter for a week. I don't have a TV. We got rid of our TV like decades ago, and it is so amazing. My son sat in my class for a year, and before he took like a real chemistry class, but so he sat in on it, and so he did all the things, and so he actually gave up politics first, which was a blessing because I don't talk politics. And so, but he gave up the news, and actually was a huge game changer. He's like, it's just total garbage. So like he turned 18, he was so excited to learn about all this stuff. And he was really into it. And then he started realizing, and our house is much more peaceful. Yeah. So these are just big fancy words. So it's called gluconeogenesis because gluco is glucose, neo is new glucose, genesis is to make. So we're making new glucose from something, and it's making it from protein. So this whole thing doesn't involve anything of breaking down fat. It's going to end up storing everything as fat and cholesterol because you're getting it. And what happens is the liver just starts storing it all around the liver. And so you've seen that. You just go and look. People like are kind of like they have all this fat in this area. And I've told the story before where I had a woman I worked with, and I came back after the summer, and she looked amazing. I'm like, wow, what'd you do? She lost 20 pounds, and it turned out our dean got removed, and she was the secretary who had to sit there and work. The dean would walk by her every day and just glower at her and just and they didn't get along. And she was the receptionist, and you have no power. And she said, I did nothing different. They removed the stress that was there. And so ponder that. Like, when is it that you can say, I just need a date to myself. I just need to go for a walk by myself, and not a power walk. When you need to go for a power walk, that's when to say, you know what? I need to walk with my dog and smell the roses. And my poor dog this morning on our morning walk, Shanti just kind of was like, what was that? And it was because I go to watch the sunrise, and I didn't realize it was clear. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to see it. So I was like running to the place where I could see the sunrise. And so it was like the miracle of my morning. I actually made it. But Shanti's like she's tiny, she's 10 pounds, being dragged behind. And then I'm like, we have to get home so I can get to class. And then we get home, and she just kind of looks at me like, that was not like our usual walk of just like really mellow. And she's tiny, so she's down by all the flowers. So she smells everything. Anyway, that's going to actually be it might be next week's challenge, is to deal with cortisol. Remember that. So if you're somebody who needs to catch up, like on one of the 7 weeks challenges, like from last week, you'll be able to next week, and then you're going to also do something to mellow yourself. So whether it's giving up social media for a week, or going for a mellow walk every day, like where you just walk without your cell phone, and you just go for that walk. So it takes like an hour to walk a mile. And it's going to be really nice weather, so you just stop and really like go, wow, look at these flowers. The guy in my church group always is like, what? Because at the end of they always do praises. I've never done this, and so I never know what to say. And I'm like, the flowers are amazing outside. And so it's just kind of become my thing, because I'm like, they really are. And so it's all about the magnolias. And he's like, what are magnolias? He said it like that, like with his attitude. And so everybody's pulling up pictures. But it's really interesting when it's my turn, everybody just gets really calm because they're like, oh, she's going to talk about something. And everybody else is telling about all their troubles and worries and this and that. And it's like, just go smell the flowers because all your troubles go away. And then you're not like one of these, or yeah, it'll be good because you guys will be preparing for your class presentation. So we'll all be mellow. So we'll do that. Anyway, it decreases your thyroid function, your liver detox. If you're constantly in stress, your body can't work because it's trying to fight for real, like the dog and the cat back here. And so everything's getting turned off. And your immune system. So this thing where they kept us in perpetual fear, and you guys know that some people, and they just watch the news constantly. And I have to tell you, on Monday, I didn't know what was going on. You all came in with masks on, and I don't watch the news except for the 4 people who've been in my class. You guys couldn't see behind you, and I was like, and I have no problem if you want to wear masks, that's fine. But I was like, everybody's wearing them suddenly, and then on campus, I could see people walking by, and I'm like, did something happen? And like, I missed the memo, and I'm like, well, I can't. Lecturing with a mask on doesn't work very well. But anyway, it is being respectful of all that, but also not allowing it to control everything because your immune system. You want to keep it healthy. So it's not just what you eat, it's your attitude, your sleep cycle. So actually staying up, running those long hours. Now with that, you guys are much younger than me and your sleep cycle is shifted some, but you do want to get a solid, everybody differs on the number. They usually say 8 hours. Usually younger people need like 9-10 hours. If you start getting into meditation and you really get to the point, you can cut down to fewer hours and stuff, but you do want to get a good night's sleep. There is actually enough studies now that have shown if you're looking though at a computer screen, at a phone screen after 10 o'clock at night, doesn't matter your age, your body's not going to make melatonin. And so you have to learn, so maybe that will be your thing. At 10 o'clock at night, I do it at 9 o'clock at night. All the media, everything gets turned off. So all of you who send me emails and stuff late at night, that's why you're not getting responses, because everything's going to be turned off. Melatonin isn't what makes you go to sleep. Melatonin is released when you go to sleep. And it is an antioxidant. It is one of the strongest antioxidants in our body, and it goes around and cleans up all the mess from the day while you're sleeping. When you take it as a pill, it doesn't do the same thing. It's a placebo effect. All these people take melatonin. And so if you take it and it helps you sleep, absolutely keep doing it because you need some. But eventually you can get to the point where you realize I can sleep. It's just a change in the relaxation. And so your body is making less melatonin, actually also less serotonin. And so you're just in the state of perpetual stress. So the question is, how can we shift the pathway? Sunshine. And we're going to see that vitamin D is also made from cholesterol. So if you're getting sunshine, your body's going to make vitamin D instead of cortisol. So again, everything in moderation. It doesn't mean go out and get sunburned this weekend because the sun's going to come out. It's not going to be, but yeah, sunlight, going out for that nice walk in the sun, exercising. And so many of us know when you get into an exercise routine, you always feel better. It's like, yeah, I need to go for my run. And it's finding the joy in it. It's not doing it, for other people. You're doing it because it does make you feel good. And it's finding and being playful in your exercise. So if you're doing like that 3-mile run and you're going really hard, also find the time in there to, like at the end in your walk, to find pleasure or something, or to do something fun with that. So like Cookie Monster, or when you're lifting. Like, I had actually the opportunity, I used to tutor some Tibetan monks many, many years ago. And I have never met anybody who's as joyful other than small children and stuff. And I also got to see the Dalai Lama one time here. So it was an audience, was downtown. The whole thing was in Tibetan. So my last name's Sherpa. So the Sherpas and Tibetans were, and it was 2 hours. And he just sat there and talked. And we all sat on the floor and the kids all ran around. And Joey was 2. So this would have been 22 years ago. And even though I don't speak Tibetan, I understood everything he was saying because he was just like exuding peace, like in his presence and stuff. But anyway, the monks were always, they just could joke, and some of them never spoke a word of English. That was the best part. I tutored him for 2 or 3 years, but I could still understand. We could understand each other beautifully, and so it's finding that laughter in your day. Like, think about when's the last time you really laughed, or made somebody else laugh. That's even better, to bring joy to other people. And so getting out of yourself and helping others. Yeah, finding sleep. Our animals, when we pet them, our animals are amazing. Go adopt an animal at the shelter, and then keep eating healthy. That makes you feel better. So if you're eating crappy food, it's going to keep your body in stress. And this is like that crazy biochemistry slide. But again, these are all steroids, and it's just showing arrows because it's a pathway our body follows. The key about this, though, here's cortisol, like here in the middle for those of, yeah. So at the end in the middle, all the way on the right, but there's other pathways that go to other things. And so the question is, there's one way over on the left, that's the first like indigo one that says dehydroepiandrosterone. That is DHEA. And that is actually called the longevity molecule. So if they measure the amount of DHEA in your body, they actually can predict your biological age. So if you've heard people say, you're saying my biological age is like 80, that means your DHEA is super low because this pathway is following the yellow and ending up over here in the green instead of coming down here. There's also another piece that's missing, which is the vitamin D. So if you're getting sunshine, it's going to go to vitamin D. And so menopause, your DHEA drops. So as you get older, your DHEA drops. We want to keep it higher. And so keeping it on that pathway helps to lower it. Yeah, and so as I mentioned, humans are the only ones that can turn the response on or off without a tiger actually in front of you, without being in the car and having something happening. And we know we all do it all the time, where we create a whole scenario. Somebody might have left you a message, you're like, what do they mean by that? And then you then spend the whole rest of the day, you've all done it. You should all be laughing like Stephen is, because I've done it. And you're like, you know, or your phone goes off and you're thinking, what do they want? Why do they keep calling me? It's like your dad, and you're like, why does he keep calling me? What's going on? And you create this whole scenario. Oh my gosh, did this happen? Did that happen? And then you find out they're like, oh, I just sat on my phone and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to call you. My phone just was like, my phone does that. It's just like terrible. So it's learning to just let go and say, I'll find out when I see them, and to laugh about it, to be able to laugh at yourself. I think laughter might be the one thing that breaks the chain and can make cortisol go backwards. I don't know though. This is like my personal theory that I just made up right now. Anyway, so the animals, when they stop, they like come out of it, but we like keep it going and going. And so you want your thoughts to blossom. And I had a crazy yoga teacher. I don't go to them anymore. I went to him for 3 years, and people are like, why do you keep going to him? And I'm like once a month he'll say something that's just like, wow, where'd that come from? But he really dwelled in darkness. And I just couldn't understand why he would dwell in darkness and say really unkind things to us. But every once in a while he would say something that was amazing. And he did one time say that in every moment, there's like a million or a billion or a trillion potentials, right? He said, find the most loving potential and follow that, and you will not go wrong. And it's something I always come back to when you're like feeling like overwhelmed. It's like, what's the most loving choice for me, for the other person? And if you just follow that. Anyway, down here at the bottom is Dr. Joe Dispenza. So he's going to do something. We'll watch one of his videos one week because he has a whole bunch of books out, and he has an amazing background. He actually was in a pretty serious bike accident. So he was a triathlete, and he was in a triathlon, and there was a policeman, right? Because it was a road with traffic. And the policeman was telling the bikers were coming down this road to make a turn. And he was motioning to Dr. Joe to come and make the turn. Well, there was a semi truck coming this way, and the semi truck thought the policeman was motioning to him. And so bicycle and the semi truck, you can guess who's going to win. And so somehow he didn't die, but he ends up in the hospital for like, I don't know, a month, whatever. And his back is broken. He was a chiropractor, so he knew all his anatomy. And they told him they're going to have to put rods in there and he would never walk again. They're going to do all this stuff. And he said, no. So he laid there in the hospital, and he meditated in his life, but he just kept picturing his spine and picturing it how it was supposed to be. And then he said, and he just kept doing it. And he said one day he got into this space, and I don't know how to explain it other than this. And so it will happen to you if you do this long enough. And he could just see it, and it all lined up. He's like, what just happened? And he walked out of the hospital. And he now teaches, he's like really famous, and these huge workshops, and they're extremely astronomically expensive because he's so popular. And he does online stuff too, but he has a lot of free YouTube stuff and some really amazing books. But he talks about you can either be in survival, which is cortisol and adrenaline, and you're always in fear, and you know that's how many people are, or people have been, or you can be in what he calls creation mode, which is in that place of love. And so think about that. Like, so if I'm feeling stressed, think of a moment that you just felt pure love for somebody. And so I'm blessed that I'm a mom, and so I can just think about my son, or right. And so that's when oxytocin and these other hormones, or it could be your dog, it could be your family, it could be when you were a little kid, it could be a vacation you took. Like Stephen, could be he fell in love and he, proposed. So remembering that moment, or just some moment, or like when you were in a track meet and you were just in that mode, right? And and it might have not been that you won, but you just like, you've all been there somewhere, or you were just cooking for friends and you just were just in this place of joy. And so bring yourself back to that and just sit and just remember all those emotions, and you do feel it. It will come back to you. I thought it was going to be a different picture. Anyway, we'll move on. So vitamin D, the sun is going to come out again. I saw it this morning. It was amazing. And then also the water is amazing. That's why it's so green here. So here's vitamin D down here at the bottom of the screen. This is also really weird. If you go watch the video, it's videotaping me, but I don't have the screen right. And so I think it only like shows my head, or my half of my body. But this, you can see where the green was, that this like folds in on itself. It like flips over, and that's where the other hexagon is, for those of you like the geeky chemistry part. But you can see it's cholesterol that's just basically, they cut one little piece off. And so cholesterol is on our skin. It's all throughout our skin cells. Every cell in your body has cholesterol. And when vitamin D strikes our skin, when sunlight strikes our skin, cholesterol is changed into vitamin D. So vitamin D is not actually a vitamin. It was misnamed when they found it. And everyone agrees with this now. It is not actually considered a vitamin, but we'll talk about again briefly when we get to vitamins. It is actually a steroid. And so it should be considered a steroid hormone, but nobody, that it's too big of a transition, it seems like, for us to make that. And it is absolutely essential. Your body, so vitamin sunlight is considered an essential nutrient. It's considered essential because you need sunlight to make vitamin D. In the winter months, so for half the year, here in Oregon, we don't make vitamin D. We can make it again now, but that's why our skin's pale. And yeah, let's go through all the cool stuff. So again, it's not essential, sunlight is, but for us, 6 months of the year, it is. It is all these carbons, it's hydrophobic, so we do store some. So I've always thought our healthcare plans should pay for those of us who live here to go to Mexico for 1-2 weeks or Hawaii in the winter, because you go there, you will make vitamin D. And so anyway, Costa Rica. There's a lot of things, like if you lived in Costa Rica in your childhood, you end up not having any certain issues as an adult. And they used to think, again, it was coconut oil, different things like that, and they've now realized it's the vitamin D. We are north of the 45th parallel, so if you ever drive to Salem, you pass a sign that says you just crossed the 45th parallel, and so that means halfway from the equator to the North Pole, we are north of Salem, so we're a little bit north of that point, and we have the highest rates of a whole bunch of things, and it has to do with vitamin D. So in the winter, you have to supplement with it. But the big thing about vitamin D, most people, when they think of their bones, healthy bones, they're like, I need calcium. You actually need vitamin D, because vitamin D is what tells your bones to take in the calcium. And it's going to be, so there is something called rickets. I don't show a picture of it, but it's that their bones end up like bow-legged. Their bones become really fragile, and so there, you can Google it and look at the pictures. And it was during the Industrial Revolution that this became a huge problem, and part of it was all the smoke, and then also the real problem was because everybody was going to work and they were starting to work long hours indoors, and so small children were being left indoors for long times, and so they weren't out playing like when we were farmers and stuff, out farmers, hunters, whatever, gatherers, we were outside fishing, whatever it was, and so we were inside. So your bones, you want healthy bones. And so this is, I read this in a book like 20 years ago, and it was the best explanation I've ever seen of what vitamin D really does. When I look at like all the textbooks, like nutrition books and things like that, I don't really like their explanations. And so they said it actually, so it's kind of weird how it's worded, but if you think about it, it's like, so it's a balance of the magnesium and calcium. And so magnesium is what gets the calcium into your bones, and your bones that are made up of calcium. Magnesium, by the way, is really high in chocolates. Those of us who love chocolate, it's often indicating that's where we're getting our magnesium from, dark chocolate. And so especially for women, menstrual cycles, when you would find you really crave chocolate, that's often indicating magnesium. And it's actually, good chocolate is actually, there's nothing wrong with chocolate, because it's also a huge antioxidant, so your bones are strong. And it's, vitamin D helps your immune system. There's probably two reasons here. One, vitamin D itself does, and actually your immune system, your white blood cells actually have receptors for vitamin D. Isn't that fascinating? So you go out, if you're not feeling good, so all of you folks online who aren't feeling good, go out. Well, it's going to be raining today, but you kind of some morning sun. Just you need to get sunshine. And there's actually, when COVID, there's a huge link of COVID and vitamin D. In this country, you can't find these articles. It's really hard. They're all from overseas. And it was actually initially in the first few months that they were finding a huge connection between vitamin D and COVID, and how you handled it and got over it faster or not. And so if people had very low vitamin D levels, were getting COVID and were having it, like they would get more sick, or they would have it for a while. And the thing that was really interesting was Italy got hit really hard by COVID. And you would think it's Mediterranean, they should have high vitamin D levels. But because they see the sunlight, they're not actually in those winter months making the vitamin D because the angle of the sun isn't right yet. And then places that were Northern European, they actually, because of their socialized health, they supplement everybody in their society with vitamin D in the winter months because they know they're not getting sunlight. And they also have smaller populations. There's a whole bunch of other things there. In India, they found a huge connection with the vitamin D. And this is why in the summer months, we don't get colds and flu, right? Some people do still, but cold and flu season goes way down because we're making more vitamin D in the summer months. And so, and if you look at the COVID or any flu season, it's always, and it's in the later winter months. So it doesn't usually start, like they'll tell us in October, oh, it's cold and flu season to get us afraid. But this is also going to bolster immunity because if you're making vitamin D, you're not making cortisol. And cortisol, the stress one, is going to inhibit the immune system. So, and again, this is one of the few things, there's really no choice. You have to take it as a supplement in the winter months. But in the summer months, it is much better to make it in your own body. And the number that they all say is 20 minutes of sunlight on your hands or arms and stuff. So if you wear sunscreen, you don't make it. So you have to go outside first for like 20 to 30 minutes and then put the sunscreen on. Also, if your antioxidant levels are high, so if you're eating lots of fruits and vegetables, you will find you also don't get sunburn as much. So if you are truly like starting to eat more fruits and vegetables, and I've had enough students tell me these stories. They said they could not even go to the beach. If they even stepped out of the car, they would be sunburned. Amber's looking at me. She's like, yeah, that was me. I had the sunscreen, the hat, everything on, right? And they said, I went for a walk for 3 hours. I didn't have any sunscreen on. It was amazing. And so I'm not saying to go and get sunburned and stuff, but there is also a connection to all the antioxidants that help repair from any damage. And it's not as much taking it that day, it's your body has to be filled with them. And so it's eating the fruits and vegetables all the time. Same with like zinc and vitamin C, where they're like, oh, it doesn't do anything for a cold. If you actually look at the real studies, they do. It's that you can't take it when you get the cold. Your body has to, so you have to be taking zinc, or at least start taking it in the fall, so your zinc levels are built up for when cold and flu season happens, or eating your good food. Nuts are really high in zinc, hemp. So the coordination between your nervous system and your muscles. So whether or not you're going to do headstands or not, but stability and balance is related to vitamin D. And so this is a big one with nursing homes, because when people end up in nursing homes and care facilities, they never go outside.
Yeah, they're all on vitamin D.
And they're on vitamin D some places. So if you have does anybody have like a lizard, a reptile? If you have a reptile, when you get a reptile, you have to get a special cage and a special light. And it is because if they don't get vitamin D, their spines become warped. So there's actually some care facilities, I don't know if it's happened around here, where they actually have changed the lighting. And so it's giving them so that they can make the vitamin D and stuff. But it really, I know it's really sad because we don't let them go outside, which is also going to bring them joy and stuff to just walk outside. But yeah, they do. And they probably all on cranberry juice every day too.
Well, it's not real cranberry juice, but right?
Oh,
It's
really?
like
Is it all
cocktail?
sugary?
Oh, it's terrible.
So it's sugared.
Yeah.
So it's, well, then it's useless. The cranberries are really cool. That'd be a cool topic because cranberries, apparently it's something with the nooks and crannies of the cranberry, and it binds to that bacteria that causes the UTIs that are rampant in either a hot tub or in nursing homes for some reason. But anyway, so stability and stuff. And so there's a guy, and he's called the Sunshine Doctor. He's from Boston. So with that, the tanning boosts give you UV, like the full spectrum. There is a connection with cancer and too much sunlight. And tanning booths actually are banned if you're under a certain age, because so many young girls were using the tanning booths because, I mean, we've screwed up people's perceptions of themselves, and they were starting to have skin cancers in all these young girls, and it was from the tanning booths and stuff. But apparently this lighting and stuff isn't working in that same way. And by the way, so this is not all skin cancers. There are skin cancers caused by the sun. Most skin cancers happen on areas of the body that were never exposed to the sun. And so there's actually other causes. They have likened our fear of the sun has possibly caused more cancers than it's protecting. So use the sunscreen, and that is because vitamin D is a steroid. If you're making vitamin D, you're not making estrogen. And so all the female cancers, breast cancer, uterine cancer, is often related to high levels of estrogen. If you're making just the right amount of vitamin D, that will keep your estrogen in check. And so breast cancer rates in places like Costa Rica and Hawaii are extremely low compared to places north of the 45th parallel. And yeah, it's like one of the best correlations is to the vitamin D. So anybody with MS or issues with balance and stuff. And cancer, there's actually several types of cancer that are related to vitamin D. So as I just mentioned, with estrogen, also sleep, melatonin, you have to have darkness in a sleep mask. And that's one of the best things to prevent breast cancer. So if you sleep with a nightlight, you can't, you mess up the whole cycle, you don't make melatonin, you end up with higher estrogen, and you have higher rates of breast cancer. So they actually see, 50%, that's, most of these studies see like a 1 or 2%, 50%. To me, that's extremely significant, not the statistically significant, actually usually means 1 to 2%. Also prostate cancer and actually colon cancer. So I don't fully understand why it's colon cancer, but I've read enough studies. It's a huge decrease in colon cancer and vitamin D. And I don't know fully why. I'm sure there's different theories out there. All right. So if you have a deficiency or a deficiency in vitamin D, and the numbers, it has been controversial what our numbers should be. How much you need, but again, in the summertime or for 6 months of the year, maybe 8 months, you can get, you can make it. But depression is absolutely related, and that's the seasonal affective disorder, which is usually credited to serotonin, which it is, but serotonin and vitamin D and melatonin and estrogen actually all have a balance in your body. And so when the vitamin D is low, the serotonin is low because the estrogen levels go up higher. And so fatigue, we talked about the weakened immune system, so always feeling ill. That would just be bad if you're yeah, you feel like the some days though, right? We all feel like that pile bones. Oh, muscle achiness, just that achiness. And that's alopecia, where you lose all your hair. And autoimmune, so everything is now, autoimmune doesn't mean it's a forever thing. Autoimmune means your immune system is out of balance. And it's now behaving in a way it's not supposed to, where it starts going after something in your body, say. It is, unfortunately, don't ever let a doctor say to you, this can't be cured, you have to live with it for the rest of your life. It's like conversation we had the other day, that they often are like, we have no idea. Or else they tell you, oh, you're stuck with this for the rest of your life, here's a drug and stuff. That's when it's actually good when they do that, because you should get mad at them and leave and say, you know what? They're limited by what they were taught. And until they can take themselves out of that limitation, that's why I have a book for you, you can look at, but I don't like textbooks because they're limited. The research isn't there, and that's why you guys are doing a paper on a food thing, to look at some of the research. And again, you have to find 2 articles. They can be sciencey, they can be psychology, they can be whatever. You know, we could all do vitamin D and do a paper on it, and they would all be totally different because we'd each end up down our own rabbit hole and stuff. But you're not all going to do the same topic because it's fun doing different things. The thing that's really weird when you have a vitamin D deficiency, if you have high cholesterol, you have a vitamin D deficiency. And I don't fully understand why. I've listened to some talks on it, and they're obviously missing something in the biochemistry, but and so I don't know, it doesn't matter which is the cause and the effect, but those 2 for some reason always go hand in hand. That high cholesterol, your vitamin D is low. So I don't know if it's your vitamin D is low first or what. I also don't believe in numbers. I believe in how you feel. And so you're not feeling good. But again, that's just the pictures. There's cholesterol, and you can see it just changes. That bond gets broken open. All right. So something else for cholesterol. So again, like I keep talking about cholesterol, it's all going back to that. That's our topic. Is we all have heard of cholesterol, and I usually start the talk. And so I apologize. The Zoom thing and being in here, everything's and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, right? But we all think cholesterol is bad. Cholesterol is bad news, but cholesterol does all these things. It's a precursor for the steroids, which we need those steroids. We need the stress response. We just don't want too much of it. We need vitamin D. And this is bile. And so the difference here is up at the top. It gets modified. So that red piece up there is how the cholesterol gets modified. And that makes it so it has this hydrophobic and hydrophilic, so it's amphiphilic. So those of you who've been with me with other chemistries, we talk about it, but it means it can work as an emulsifier. And so that red piece at the top likes water, and the rest is going to like fat and cholesterol. So when you eat, you will have fat in your diet. And so bile is made in your liver. It's stored in your gallbladder. You absolutely need your gallbladder. If you have gallbladder issues, gallbladder stones, there's actually a massage for it. It's really simple. I can teach it to you to remove the stones. And it's simple diet, and it will all clear up. You have to decrease fat in your diet because that's the big thing. You pretty much have to for that time until you can clear up the stones. Anyway, so bile is going to be what makes a boat around the fats in your diet and carries it from your small intestine to your liver. So anything that is hydrophobic, fats and cholesterol in your diet, and also the vitamins that are fat soluble in your diet, they have to be carried around. And so that's what bile does, and it emulsifies. And then the 4th thing, that cholesterol is absolutely needed. Every cell in your body is surrounded by a cell membrane. It's like the walls in this room. And every cell membrane is here in the lime green at the lower corner, or up here, it shows it's cholesterol. Every cell membrane has cholesterol throughout it. And so these little black zigzags are fatty acids, and they make this have fluidity. The purple indigo things are proteins, but cholesterol makes sure that I call it the Goldilocks molecule. It is the molecule that makes sure that your membranes are perfect. So you don't want your membranes to be really wussy, so like they can't do anything, and you don't want them to be like too stuck. And so cholesterol is there to make sure everything's perfect. And so absolutely we need it. And then what we've done to it is, this is not how we ever ate until the past 50, 60 years. And that's what we're seeing. The real pandemic has been this. So getting cholesterol like this is highly oxidized cholesterol. This is very different and you're also getting all this food that's going to get changed by your liver real quick, and then your liver doesn't know what to do with it, and it stores it as cholesterol and saturated fat, and it gets just shipped off, and there's too much to be used by any of your cells to make steroids and stuff, and so it just gets dumped off. You absolutely, by lifestyle changes, which is not that, you can become healthy. That is because there is actually apps that are coming out where you're going to be able, you can already do it. They're expensive, but to constantly know what your blood sugar is, but that's not a good idea because people don't understand what those numbers mean. And they're like, oh my gosh, my number's at 200. And then they start panicking, and then that's going to make it go higher. Like the white coat syndrome, whenever anybody goes to the doctor and you check your blood pressure and your blood pressure is high because you're nervous. And then you go home and you check it and it's perfectly fine. And so doctors have realized that. But this is the bad news, and rightfully so, that if you miseat it, you're eating like that previous slide, you're going to end up with cholesterol just all over, and you're going to end up with bypass surgery. In this country, end up with bypass surgery. And so that is a little bit of a blurry picture that they're pulling out. That's an artery. On the screen, it's much nicer. And so they can go in and actually pull these out. They actually will go in then and put a stent in and push it. And then within 6 months, those stents are always blocked. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. It's like 80% of those surgeries are useless after 6 months. Yet we keep doing them. Like every day, it's the #1 surgery, I'm pretty sure, in this country. Or then they'll just bypass it. They'll do quadruple bypass. And there have been studies done long-term, and it is dietary, and it is you're going to a whole foods, plant-based diet. There's 4 parts to it. So whole food, plant-based, that you have to be in a support group with other people. And it's just something of having that like calm time, some type of meditative or yoga practice or something like that, and good sleep. Oh, right, gentle exercise. So whether it's walking, lifting weights, whatever it is, it's not that you have to run. Running's a wonderful thing if you're capable of it, but a lot of people who are already in this place, they're like, I can't run 3 miles. I'm never going to run. But it's really, they found if we can just get you to start walking, and you start slow, and then they add. Everybody I know who's ever done it. Anyway, so cholesterol does make your arteries harder, and they coat your arteries. So they're like a double whammy. So they're making the arteries be harder and coating in there, and which is going to increase your blood pressure, and right, the elasticity becomes worse, which increases your blood pressure more. And they are the clot that forms that eventually blocks this completely. And if you have blockage, so that's what this picture is showing. That blockage, you're not going to get flow. It's like on the interstate when there's blockage, and so you'll have a heart attack or stroke, or you get Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's is these plaques start forming in your brain, and so you can't communicate between the brain cells, and it is a type of APO. It's a protein, so there's APO, A, B, C, D, E, etc. And there is a type that's highly associated that has a huge link to Alzheimer's. In the How Not to Die book, that's when Joey became vegetarian, whole food, plant-based. That's when he stopped eating meat. When I read him the chapter on Alzheimer's, he was like, okay, I'm done. So I highly recommend the book. The research, there's actually a lot more research that's been done since then. So when we talk about cholesterol, they always talk about LDLs and HDLs. LDLs and HDLs are not actually cholesterol itself. They are what carries. Cholesterol is hydrophobic. Cholesterol cannot travel around your body on its own. It doesn't like water. So it has to have a boat that carries it around. and that boat is the LDLs or the HDLs. They're actually the same boat. And it's just so that it's a transporter. So we have a cell membrane that surrounds every cell, and the cell membrane is 2 layers. This is a 1-layer boat, and it needs a boat because, and there we go, that's a picture of it. So this is the outside, which is this, and then the inside is all cholesterol. And so it's carrying it around. It brings it to the delivery place. And so cholesterol is really lightweight. This is the part that's really bizarre. When the boat is filled with cholesterol, it's like being filled with styrofoam. It's really lightweight. So L stands for low density or lightweight. And so it means it's filled with cholesterol. And so your liver makes those and ships it off. Everybody needs cholesterol. And then once the cholesterol is no longer, once it's empty, it becomes high density or the HDLs. So it's still the same thing. It compacts on itself a little bit, but it's got more, it's become more dense, and it goes back to your liver to pick up another load. And so that's another one that actually shows it really nice. So your liver is making, it's transporting the cholesterol to every cell needs it. And then the delivery truck comes back, it's just empty now, and it goes back to get more. A really great question came up in my class last night because she asked, well, if there's extra cholesterol, like that's where the problem comes, is if we have too many calories in our diet, too much cholesterol, that this whole cholesterol thing is why margarine, like they found trans fats actually created these problems more. So the cholesterol just gets dumped off because there's no place to deliver it. And so eventually it just dumps it off and you get clots forming. Her question was, well, do the HDLs bring back extra cholesterol? I don't know if there's a point when you modify your diet and become healthier, you do lose all that extra cholesterol. I don't know if they know exactly what happens to that cholesterol, but there have been, and this is just somebody else's cartoons. So there was somebody that asked a question, and they said, I don't understand how the fat soluble vitamin. So vitamins are stored in our body until we need them. So they are going to be stored with the lipids, which are the triglycerides. That's what this is showing, the 3 fatty acids and cholesterol. They're all getting in the boat. The boat is called a lipoprotein. So a low density LD lipoprotein. So LDL is carrying them all. And then that's just another picture. So there's cholesterol in the middle. Right. And that's more a 3-dimensional. So it's packed with cholesterol. And we absolutely need this because all the cells need it. These are just all different pictures showing different ways. So it's going off, it drops it off, and then comes back and gets more. But the problem is there's only so many docks, and so the ships are stuck out here. And so when you have really high LDLs and your HDLs are going to be a normal number, but the ratio's off because your liver's making tons and tons of LDL. So this number keeps going up, but you still only have the same amount coming back. That's where the problem is. And so that's why they have found it's not the total cholesterol, it's actually the ratio. So I had my cholesterol checked 5 years ago because they just do that when you reach a certain age. And my number was actually like 240, which I was like, well, that's interesting. My ratio was actually wonderful, which was interesting. So it just meant everything was coming back. So it was doing what it was supposed to do. But I think the next slide eventually will show this. Those are just numbers. And it's not that one is good or bad. They're both needed. It's not actually, cholesterol is no longer the marker of heart disease. It's a certain type of cholesterol, which might be the next slide. These yellow things are always marking cholesterol. These are blood cells, and the whole thing is going to end up making blood clots and stuff. But yeah, that's why I said that. So at least a third, it might be higher numbers now, people who have heart attacks actually have low cholesterol. And then there are some people who have high cholesterol who never have a heart attack. So what's going on with that? I had a student, so smoking, absolutely, if you smoke, yeah, give that up. Blood pressure, that's a whole nother can of worms. Insulin. So we give insulin. People who are type 1 diabetes, they have to have insulin, but we're probably giving too much. And we have this misbelief that once you're diabetic, you're always diabetic, which isn't true. And then this guy, homocysteine, is a modified amino acid. And if you need it, but if it builds up, it means the next step is not happening, which is where homocysteine is going to go. And it's actually a really good marker if you have high levels of homocysteine that you're going to have issues with heart disease. If you're not getting enough of the essential fatty acids, and AO is antioxidants, that when they go back and look at all of these, they realize it's the people aren't eating plants. They're not eating fruit and stuff. And so they're not getting antioxidants. Getting it in a pill doesn't do the same thing. And so you got to eat fruits and vegetables. That a lot of the things in the original studies that indicated, it was the Framingham study, which now is like 30 or 40 years, it's still going on, that they just saw a huge correlation, the highest correlation possible between total cholesterol. And again, this is 40 years ago, before we had more and more elegant tests. And as they've gone back and we have better computers, they're realizing there's actually a huge correlation with antioxidants, that it's the oxidation of the cholesterol that is causing issues, as well as the oxidation of all the fats and stuff that we've talked about. And just the right plate. Yeah, so the low micronutrients and homocysteine. And the high homocysteine is absolutely related to the low micronutrients. And your body actually can make a lot of these vitamins. And so when we have low levels of those, it's our microbiome, it's the bacteria in our gut. And so keeping that healthy. And so this huge amount of antibiotics we put people on is interfering with our gut microbiome, which interferes with all of the vitamin production and just causes this perpetuation. There's actually been a link to like pretty much every childhood issue with mental issues, so ADD and autism, with the microbiome and the overprescription of antibiotics. All that, it's like pretty well confirmed, and that was 3 years ago or 2 years ago, and it all was right when COVID happened, and so nothing made the news. I don't know if anything makes the news anymore. So lipoprotein A. This is one of my favorite papers I ever read. So Linus Pauling was born in Portland, 34th, and anyway, there's Linus Pauling House. He won 2 Nobel Prizes. There's only one other person, Maria Curie, who won 2 Nobel Prizes. And so his first one was in chemistry for determining structure of proteins and the alpha helix and a whole bunch of other stuff. And the second one was the Peace Prize. And then our government rewarded him for getting the Peace Prize by taking away his passport, or else he would have won a 3rd Nobel Prize. But they decided he must be communist because he was against nuclear testing. So this is in the 50s. It was the beginning of the Cold War, and you either believed that there was going to be, so I grew up during the Cold Wars, talk about the whole fear mentality. And so right where you would hide, they would do the drills where you would hide under a desk. There's a nuclear bomb goes off, you know, what are you going to do? You got to be Wolverine or something. Anyway, so he wrote this paper and nobody would accept it. And this guy has won 2 Nobel Prizes, is like this brilliant man, and nobody would take it because he at 18 was told he wouldn't live past 24. At 14, he was told he would live at most 10 more years. And he got really into reading, and he was big into something called orthomolecular biology or nutrition. And it's that, you know, we're all the same, but we do have some niche things that are very specific for us. And so one shoe does not fit everyone perfectly. But what he found was in this study, and he lived until he was 90. He he used to give talks around the area when he was in his 80s, and scientists wouldn't go to his talks. It would be local people. So the secretary, who used to be the secretary here when I first started, she was asking me a question one day. Some of you have heard the story, and she said, well, Linus thinks I should take this much vitamin C. And I'm like, who's Linus? She's like, well, Linus Pauling. And she just keeps talking. I'm like, well, wait a minute. You have conversations with Linus Pauling? And she's like, oh, he comes and gives talks. But he was like 90 at that point, and he never came back and gave a talk here. Anyway, this paper is that if your vitamin C levels are low, your arteries start bleeding. So your arteries have this protein that makes a braid. And if the vitamin C keeps that braid really tight. And if your vitamin C levels, your antioxidants are low, that braid becomes loose. And you have leaky blood vessels. And so the blood leaks out. You have scurvy and you're going to die. And so our body has backup plans. You could die then if you're not getting vitamin C at like 12, 15 before you've reproduced, and the species is going to die. This is not a good mechanism. So we have this backup mechanism. This was his theory, and it is lipoprotein A. And this guy, exact same density as LDLs, coats your arteries to prevent them from leaking. So when you have low vitamin C, you have high lipoprotein A, so that can protect your arteries from bleeding to death. And so you live to be 40, you have a massive heart attack because your arteries end up with too much coating. But it's to do the test to see if you actually have high LDLs or high lipoprotein A is not a common test. So it means it would be too expensive. Nobody does it. But high lipoprotein A is absolutely a huge marker that you need to just, or you could, instead of getting the test done, you could say, I need to start eating fruit every day, which hopefully you guys are still doing. You guys are supposed to be doing something like for 30 days. And so keep doing it. I mean, if you have a blip, just talk about that. But at the end of the month, that assignment will show up, or somebody will remind me, and then we do it again in the month of May. Anyway, oxidative damage, we've talked about having the fat accumulating around your belly, not being active at all, and of course being overweight. Although with that, there are people who live their whole life and they're overweight. Like my mom's in her 80s, and she's always struggled with weight issues. She's probably always been either obese or borderline obese. When she was a small girl, so my uncle George was 5 years younger than her, and he was very sickly apparently. Uncle George is 80, and he's like 6'2", and he has a PhD in nuclear chemistry, and he got to go to Berlin and go on the other side of the Berlin Wall back in the days. Anyway, when he was a little boy, he was sickly, and this is when the doctor would come into your house, and the doctor decided to give him something that was in his bag. It was purple. That's all we've ever heard from my mom. It was purple. And he gave him a spoonful. And my mom was this little like 6-year-old in the kitchen. So he gave her a spoonful too. So every time he came, he would give the two of them a spoonful of this. Well, my mom and my uncle are both bigger than anybody else in their family. So we're pretty sure it was growth hormone was what he was giving them. Now the doctor must have been also sipping from this bottle. He ends up dying at like 60, not a very old age. My mom and uncle, we have a joke that Uncle George and my mom are going to live to be like 200 because of whatever this was. But yeah. Anyway, so and like a really close friend of mine is obese, but he is just like the kindest and happiest and most joyful person. And so that's my next line. You have high cortisol, if you're always worried, if you're always stressed, if you're always angry, we all know people who are like that. And sometimes like there's a person I know who has a lot of anger, and whenever I call him, like I told the phone out here because something's gonna be like and it's like, why are we obsessing about this? And I'm always amazed he hasn't had a massive heart attack. Like, you know, when I hear he does, I'm not going to be surprised. I'll be like, yeah, wasn't too surprised. Anyway, and passive smoke. So smoking is extremely selfish because you're getting the nicotine high and everybody else around you is getting the damage. And smoking around children should be considered like against the law. All right, don't smoke. Smoke, give it up. Here we go. Oh, I have pictures. That's what's going on. So avocados, eating your nuts. And again, if you're somebody who's like, I couldn't do the nuts, you gotta email me or talk to me, because there's like 2 people who have, and we've worked out going around. So if you don't like the 7-day challenge, we can always figure out something similar. And the pigs, it's like being playful, being happy, learning to just mellow and sleep. So people who have sleep issues, it's usually they don't know how to just let go. One of the things that can help sometimes is listening to a calming meditation. Initially, you get to the point where you don't have to do that. Yeah, I'm being playful. I'm not going forward. I moved it. So this was my other tangent this past week. So these are called small dense LDLs or SD-LDLs-C. So they're no longer called LDLs. I'm just going to warn you, LDL HDL thing is really simple. The one brings it this way, the one brings it that way. There are actually several different types of LDLs. And these guys are, they thankfully named them, so it's really easy to explain them. They're small and they're dense. They're like, even though they're low density, they're like compacted. And there's an absolute, this is just from like 2 months ago, these studies. These guys, it's pretty much shown that they are like a perfect link. So it's not total cholesterol. You have to ask for an extra. I mean, I don't know why you'd care about the numbers, but if you had your cholesterol checked and you were like, huh, it's actually looking, if these are high, and it's because of the size of them. I have a picture that they actually pack in there and they can fit in all these nooks and crannies, and they're like the focal point that everything else starts forming around. They're the ones that form everything. This is like an abstract from something, and I just have it there because again, you want to find 2 studies that you can understand and you can explain. When you guys do your presentation, you want to have fun, you want to have joy with it. So everybody else, and we're in person, so you can actually ask questions, and there's people there and they can respond. But the thing that's fascinating, really fascinated me about this was all the different names we now have for LDL. So they actually put a C after it, saying LDL cholesterol, because there's also LDL triglyceride ones. There's TG is just triglyceride. There's triglyceride rich lipoprotein cholesterol, which I can't figure out what that is, but it is apparently something different. There's the small dense ones. There's all these remnants. These are all different types, but it turns out the one that is related is the small density ones. Anyway, does it all matter? It just means you need to eat healthy so everything just stays in balance, and you need to keep a healthy mind. And anyway, that was their conclusion. It was the small dense ones and the lipoprotein A that I just talked about that had our high correlation. Yeah, and that was just more studies that they're showing this. That's just a picture that shows, so there's 2 kind of general types of LDLs. These are the small dense ones, and these are, they call them like the big fluffy ones, which are not bad boys. So you want big fluffy LDLs and not small dense ones. And so the small dense ones are the ones that can make the foci that can start damaging the arteries and then make everything else start accumulating. And so, right, they're small and dense, and they actually can cause inflammation to start happening. So you can see like this purple area is just starting to get inflamed and stuff. And it's a small dense that can start making, it's just getting narrower without other stuff there. So just the artery itself is going, what the heck is this? I've been wondering if it even existed before. if that's why they never found it before. But again, they all show up in a normal panel together, and until you get this more advanced one. But if it is because we so modified food, and so the other ones are called large buoyant, and they're just big and fluffy, and apparently they don't pack together well because they're fluffy. So it's like fluffy things don't pack together, but small dense things do. Anyway, I mentioned that there's this huge correlation. These are plaques that start forming. So these are your neurons, and you want your neurons to communicate. And cholesterol ends up in there and forms these plaques, and the communication gets interrupted between the brain cell, the nerve cells, and you also get incorrect division happening. But these are the plaques. If you've heard anything about Alzheimer's, I always talk about the plaques forming. If I had an actual picture, there's also a connection with the wrong number of chromosomes. So there is a genetic link, and so people with Down syndrome, the genetic defect that causes Down syndrome is on the same gene that also can cause Alzheimer's. So they actually all end up with Alzheimer's in their 50s, which is like a huge heartbreak. But anyway, we want to all have a healthy brain, and it is eating healthy, and it is DHA. The one that comes from the fish oils or from walnuts or mother's milk, help your brain to be a healthier brain. And the other thing that was in nuts and seeds is selenium, which apparently helps to protect our brain from bad things going in. And anyway, we don't want the plaque. Encouraging it is not a good thing. And that time we can watch. So this is one of the things from, so that's the website. I think I had it on there. So for your thing this week, you guys just have to find an article on seeds or nuts and write about it. You don't have to use his website. I have it on there. So, but you can, and then you just type in like pecans, and he'll hit, or if you don't find something, I'm sure it's on every type of nut. You can find articles that are in all the literature all around. And so it just makes it really easy rather than just doing a Google search sometimes where you don't know what you will get. And again, I highly recommend both his books. This one is actually much easier to read. He breaks it down into each different type of disease, not every type of disease because there's so many. And then the second half of the book, he goes through what he calls, I don't remember if it's his daily dozen, but what you should be eating every day. So like the handful of nuts, and he goes through each one of why. And then his newer book is How Not to Diet, is extremely dense and really sciencey. So I'll just put that. For me, I was loving it. But he does these 5-minute videos. His voice is quite interesting. So I'm going to see, it should work.
Cholesterol, saturated fat, and iron from increases in animal products and meat. Overall calories just went up about 10% in Japan, whereas animal fat and meat consumption rose 500%, about 10 times the rise in sugary junk. Now, during this time span, rice consumption went down, but the thinking is that rather than white rice somehow being protected, maybe they were just eating something worse instead. It's like when you find fish consumption is correlated with less disease. You wonder if it's because they're eating that rather than some worse meat. If you look across multiple countries, you see a similar pattern, with the most important dietary link to Alzheimer's appearing to be meat consumption, with eggs and high-fat dairy also maybe contributing. There appears to be a really tight correlation between Alzheimer's and per capita meat supply. And then studies within countries uncover similar findings with Alzheimer's and cognitive decline associated with meaty, sweety, fatty diets, whereas most plant foods were associated with risk reduction. This could be for a variety of reasons. Animal products tend to have more copper, mercury, lead, cadmium, no folate, but contain saturated fat and cholesterol, and pro-inflammatory advanced glycation end products. So many mechanisms that dietary modification may be our best bet for reducing risk of Alzheimer's disease. But how do we know its cause and effect? The evidence that meat consumption is causally linked to Alzheimer's disease. Well, there's the strength of the association, the consistency across different types of studies, the fact that the dietary changes preceded the risk of dementia, the dose response, more meat linked to more risk, a bunch of plausible mechanisms. We know meat is risk factor for other chronic diseases, but there's never been a randomized controlled trial to put it to the test. When you read reviews of the damaging effects of high-fat diets to the brain and cognition, a number of factors are proposed to account for the high-fat diet-induced damage to the brain: oxidative stress, insulin resistance, inflammation, changes to blood vessels, and the integrity of the blood-brain barrier. But these are based mostly on studies of rodents. Yes, high-fat diets can cause energy dysfunction in the brain based on fancy MRI techniques. But if you're looking at that thinking, so weird looking brain, that's because those are rat brains. Let me show you two sets of human cerebral arteries. The arteries deep inside your skull. These are the brain arteries on autopsy of non-demented elderly individuals. Here are the arteries from Alzheimer's patients, clogged nearly completely shut with atherosclerotic plaque packed with fat and cholesterol. With CT scans, you can follow this intracranial artery stenosis, this brain artery clogging over time, and follow the progression from mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease. Those who only had low-grade stenosis were pretty stable over time in terms of their cognitive function and ability to dress themselves in other activities of daily living, whereas those with more clogging started slipping over the years, and those who started out with the most brain atherosclerosis rapidly went downhill and twice as likely to progress to full-blown Alzheimer's. Chronic consumption of standard Western diets enriched in saturated fat and cholesterol may compromise our cerebrovascular integrity, compromise the blood vessels in our brain. So, of course, drugs are recommended. Pharmacological modulation of diet-induced dysfunction, but why not just try to eat healthier in the first place?
Which is a this was just me going on other things. So those are a whole nother thing that's related to all this atherosclerosis. Anyway, that was a really cool thing because he talks about the thing that people have Alzheimer's, and it's like, oh my gosh, somebody in my family had it. Like a good friend of mine, she's like, my mom had Alzheimer's, so I'm gonna have it. And so she's pretty well convinced. And then she's like, I don't remember stuff. Well, that's just how it is, because it's just gonna get worse and worse. And so she's convinced that's completely a genetic thing. That might account for less than 1%. It's the clogging of the arteries from eating that diet that's highly refined, too much sugar, too much anything. And you got to eat fruits and vegetables. You have to have the antioxidants and stuff to prevent all this oxidative stress, which is what's going to clog everything. And none of us want Alzheimer's. Nobody wants to have dementia. Anyway, the foam cells are a whole nother conundrum. And so I have this guy here because it's like, what the heck are they all saying? Which is, these guys are formed from macrophages, which are a type of white blood cell. And when they eat LDL, and it's specifically oxidized LDL. And so it's that oxidative damage that we keep talking about, which comes from cooking food at high temperatures. So the frying them in things that are already oxidized. So that's the big thing about getting rid of the oil. And so I've really enjoyed reading some of your guys' stuff that like yours, it was a huge game changer for me when I realized you don't have to use oil. Like we were all, and it's kind of the same thing back to the doctors. They're stuck in their thinking that when you suddenly break the mold and say, really, I don't have to use oil. And And they didn't until they figured out how to like isolate it and stuff. And so it's trying, and some of us are at a point where we're ready really to give up oil, and some of us are at a point where, okay, I can start making, you know, my baked goods without the oils and butters, or and it's a process, and it's recognizing that. And like there's something called bliss balls. You can Google it as bliss balls, the stuff you made. I forget what you called it. But anyway, these guys have to deal with, again, that oxidative damage. So from the oxygen free radicals. Yeah. And this came from Wikipedia and me rewording it. But you keep seeing the word oxidize, and so the macrophages eat up, these white blood cells eat up these oxidized lipoproteins. So the LDLs are lipoproteins, and they become these fluffy, and they're not dangerous. According to Wikipedia, which Wikipedia is actually, you know, scientists and stuff are putting this stuff there. The thing is then they go on without the red highlighting. That's me. They do accumulate, and they form like a focal point, and then you get other stuff building on them. And so it's actually these foam cells that ate the oxidized stuff. And so specifically the ones that are oxidized, and that's the whole thing, not heating at high temperatures, and eating more fruits and vegetables. That is where all the plaque and everything else starts getting stuck. And so you have to have something that gets stuck, and then everything else gets stuck to it. And the best part is there's more, even though they're not dangerous. There's this fibrous cap that normally would protect it, but it kind of will rupture eventually because it basically has gotten too fluffy, and the thrombus forms. In case you don't know what a thrombus is, the thrombus eventually becomes an emboli. If you don't know what an emboli is, it means a blockage. It means a blood clot that got bigger, and then it gets stuck, and you have a stroke or a heart attack, or you die. But it's not dangerous. You just might have a stroke, a heart attack, or die, or lose like your leg because of gangrene and stuff. But the key word is back here. It's engulfing the things that are oxidized. So then they have like, oh, what did they say next? Oh, this was actually, I thought this was interesting. So leaky silicone breast implants actually cause this also. The macrophages are trying to eat the damaged stuff, and also persistent pathogens. So whether it's TB, and I've pondered if COVID is going to show up on this list eventually, because it's a little bit persistent these days, as many of us can testify that. And then it just says on Wikipedia they can degrade, and then it just moves on. I'm like, well, how? And like students will ask me, and I'm like, well, that's the problem. These articles just say that, but we all know how. That's just more that there's this whole thing about cytokines and chemokines and the cytokine storms and stuff. Is really, you want to stop you don't want to have oxidized food. And so that's where eating real food and not eating processed foods, so you're not getting exposed. And it really is just a small amount. So a lot of people, when they looked at food labels last week, they were saying it's just 1 gram of the polyunsaturated, but it's oxidized polyunsaturated. So it'd be like just saying it's just 1 gram of mercury or just 1 gram of lead. You don't need much lead, or just 1 gram of plutonium, actually just 1 microgram. So you don't need much, and it starts the whole chain reaction happening. And really, and again, we're all different places, but we all are now aware, and that awareness, and then making the choices saying, you know what, I'm going to have an apple instead of, or I'm going to start learning, because it really is fun to be able to make the food yourself. Yeah, so your challenge again this week is similar to last week, that you're trying to figure out where you can cut out the oxidized processed stuff. And then you're adding seeds. So whatever kind of seeds, chia, you can make something with the seeds. You can try the chia puddings. I don't like the chia puddings. I don't know if anybody's done them. I've tried them. I'm not a fan but some people absolutely love them. This isn't going to be what I thought on this one. But, and then also picking a topic. So I would like that you all pick a topic and then you can change it. So Sammy, I said touch base with you, and then there are a couple of you on the computer. But this is what we want to get away from, right? And so it's these crazy, and it drives me crazy because they'll say a student special. And this is all like it's deep fried and it's highly processed. And it's all brown. You have to get away from eating brown food and eating fresh vegetables, and also Starbucks. And so hopefully you guys are in the midst of a 30-day. Can you get Starbucks today? I noticed. Or did you like chug it down in the car?
Wait, you're hungry?
Yeah.
It's in my phone.
No, I already drank it in the car.
I
really
don't go to
fast.
Starbucks though. I go to, it's like a coffee shop on my house. It's called Irish Bros. But anyways.
Yeah. Well, at least it's a small local one, but hopefully you've been doing something where you stop eating crap. So I do. Okay, I still have 5 more minutes. I have 2 more slides, and I figured since we're talking about cholesterol, we should talk about eggs. So you can try doing flax eggs with your baking. They're really simple. You just Google or chia eggs, whichever you have. So you can make brownies, or I always add them. But this is how you make your eggs is important as whether or not you choose to eat them. And this is a picture, and the barbecue chicken is there for a reason. There was actually a Harvard study that was done on early stage prostate cancer, and they're trying to figure out what some of these things were, what causes and stuff. And the biggest link they found was the men that ate eggs had the progression of the cancer to become where it became a more aggressive cancer was double, not 2% more. It was double the progression. And this is not eating eggs every day. And that's death. It had almost double the rate of dying because it's progressing and stuff. Yeah, there was only one thing that was worse, and that was chicken. And this is something that fascinates me because students will say to me, well, I don't eat meat, I only eat chicken. Chicken might now be the worst meat for you, period. It's been so changed in the past 20 years. Now, if you have your own farm and you're growing chicken, that's very different. Like Stephen eats very much meat and stuff, and we've had conversations, but he's getting it like wild meat, and people who fish and stuff. And so he has that blessing, and he would agree. Somebody had asked him, where can you get this stuff? And he'd say, well, you're gonna have to go to a butcher, but he doesn't even have to go to the butcher. He's getting it sent to him and stuff. But if you're buying the chicken in the store, and it was like a 4-fold increase in the progression and then in the rates of death. And it is because we were taught, like back, your parents would have been taught, it was before you were born, that chicken had less saturated fat and cholesterol or blah, 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 or whatever, and the protein. And then they modified how the chicken was grown. So the chicken never leaves its coop. And it's like 80% fat now. So it used to be like one of the leanest meats, and now it is nothing like that chicken. It's 80% fat. And then also how you cook it. So animal, this is one of the big problem with the animal protein, is you're getting the creatine and it's the nitrogen. And when your liver does its detox thing, you end up with some things that are carcinogenic. And so it's the heterocyclic amines, and poultry is like the highest source of these heterocyclic amines. But it gets even better, and that's why these guys are down here. And it is when they are barbecued and then cooked at a high temperature. Barbecue sauce, if you haven't done the analysis, you're supposed to look at things oil. One of the things to make fun again is like look at 2 different brands of peanut butter. And so find a healthy and an unhealthy one. But barbecue sauce is pure high fructose corn syrup and sugar. And so it's the mixture of the sugar with this protein that's high in the amines, and actually chicken's just high in fat now too. And it doesn't mean go to these things and say, oh, grilling is bad for you, but it creates what are called advanced glycation end products. So they cross-link, and it's like a guarantee you're going to cause. And so eating greens, like me and Shanti do. I thought the next picture was something different, but it's going to be age. I lost my last slide. But advanced glycation end products, again, they show the DNA, but these things are not just going after the DNA, they're going after cell membranes, they're going after the mitochondria. But it was a lovely name that they gave it. And they actually even gave it even better acronyms like RAGE. So the R stands for the receptor for age, which was appropriately named. And again, it all comes back to the stress from oxidative damage, which again can be from the food that's already oxidized because it's processed. And again, oils are the number one because of those double bonds. Sugar causes oxidative stress, and how you prepare your food. So frying in the oils. Yeah, it was something Steven said, like, why do people put oil in the pan and then cook meat? Like the meat has its own, I've never understood that. And I've asked people, or broiling. So there are ways to prepare. And that's where we're using water, because water can't get to a high enough temperature to cause oxidation to happen. And then also your attitudes, like I was talking about for the first part, is stress, like our own stress causes oxidative damage, which leads to inflammation. And anyway, this cross links to everything. And so your blood vessels, your organs, and fructose is 1,000 times better at this than any other sugar. And so this is something that's driving me crazy, because it's almost like you can't buy anything now. We're back on the fructose thing because we've become consumed about high glucose. So if you're checking your blood glucose, that's only checking glucose. Fructose is actually 1,000 times worse than the glucose. And so they put it in health food. They will be like, you know, fructose will be on there, and it's 1,000 times more damaging because it's even better at doing this. And it actually binds to your hemoglobin, disrupts your hemoglobin. And so this was a definition I found somewhere, that you just get these clumps of useless debris that's resistant to your body's cleaning processes. So basically your body is like, what the heck is this? And it just are these clumps of useless debris. And it just accelerates aging, diabetes, probably every possible thing you can think about. So eat healthy and give me your topics and do your homework, catch up if you're behind, or talk to me. I'm going to stop my recording and I'm done.